of Smeester's Corner. I'm Adam Smeester. Today's topic is combating hate. All right, so recently I've been watching and listening interviews with former, not current, former white supremacists. And you might say, Smeester, why would you be interested in what they have to say? So I'm interested for two reasons. Number one, if you're not born into it, how do you get into that radical of an ideology? What happens? What do they say to you that makes you attracted to that? Number two, I'm interested to know how a person who is radicalized like that gets out. Like, what makes you see the light? And it taught me a lesson about hate. So here's how it works. These groups, these white supremacist groups, have recruiters, and they will go around looking for mainly boys, sometimes women or young girls. They'll search for a certain type of boy. And here's kind of who they search for. These boys are really angry. And they're really angry in life because maybe their parents weren't around, their parents treat them like garbage, friends treat them like garbage, they don't have a lot of friends, they're kind of outliers, they're kind of the lone wolf type, and they're just angry. And society has told them that they shouldn't be that angry because, of their privilege or whatever, which makes them even more angry. So these groups kind of prey on these kids, and they befriend them, and they tell them, first of all, one thing, that they're a victim, that the way that their life turned out is not their fault. And it might not be their fault, but then they tell them that they've been victimized. They're not just a victim, they've been victimized by certain groups, usually other racial groups, that they're taking their jobs or whatever. And that's how they recruit them. Then they invite them to things, they get them involved socially, and these groups provide them with connection. They provide them with friendship, and they provide them with community, all things that people just in general want or need. So they go to these gatherings, they go to these groups, they talk about things, they vent, they get in fights, they search out fights with people who they disagree with. When they get in fights, they have each other's back, which just reinforces the connection. So that's kind of how it starts. And then one way that they get radicalized is obviously through the training of this ideology that they are now into, but a lot of it is people's reaction to them. So people obviously are going to react negative to these guys, and they'll try to shame them, and you've probably seen that. And they'll say, you blah, 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 calling them names. Why don't you walk out in front of a bus, blah, blah, blah. And usually that never works. Well, not usually, it never works. No one ever thinks to themselves, oh, I should go walk out in front of a bus. Oh man, maybe I'm just seeing the world differently and I should change. Nobody ever thinks that. What you end up doing when you shame somebody for their opinion, whether it's a white supremacist or some other person with kind of a hateful ideology or just someone who you disagree with, whenever you shame them, you just reinforce who they think they are. So when you shame someone with this radical of an ideology, you're just reinforcing who they thought they were to begin with, and you're just pushing them into more of a white supremacist mindset. And they're just going to dig their heels in, and they're just going to say, well, I'm obviously touching a nerve. That's why these people are reacting, because they can't handle truth, and that's the way that they see it. So when you shame somebody for that, you're not doing anything. You're probably just making it worse. But then they get to the point in the interview where they talk about how they changed. And this is the part that I find interesting, how these people changed. How, if you're that radical, how do you decide that your belief system isn't the best for you? And here's what one guy said. He said that he would go to McDonald's every single day for breakfast. And behind the counter, there was this older African woman who was working behind the counter that would take his order. And they kind of became friends. Kind of distant friends, if you will. So she would ask him about his day and ask him about his life, and he told her that he had a daughter, and they kind of became friends, little acquaintances, and he actually kind of started looking forward to seeing her every day. But the thing was, he would wear long sleeve shirts because he was all tatted up with these kind of Nazi white supremacist tattoos. He doesn't go around showing those in public often. So one day he forgot and wore a short sleeve shirt. So he goes up there and orders, and the woman is kind of looking at him. She hasn't seen the tattoos before, so she's kind of check it out, and then she realizes what the tattoos are. And he said he kind of had a moment of panic, and her eyes got wide, and she kind of looked at him, and she said two sentences. She didn't shame him. She just said, "That's not you. You're better than that." And those two sentences alone were like, just penetrated the guy. And afterwards, he felt really bad, and he kind of felt shame because someone actually gave him some compassion. Someone knew that there was someone better that they were trying to call out, that none of his white supremacist friends were doing. They were fine with him the way that he was, but someone else tried to call out a better part of him. And that hit him. That sort of compassion hit him. And he didn't change right away. It took him like 2 years. But that woman planted a seed that there was something better inside of him, and he kind of knew it. And that just kind of ate at him, and then he kind of like tried to forget about it and reject it, but it just kept coming back up. And finally he decided, yeah, there is something better. This woman, this one person showed me compassion, and it was a person I was supposed to hate that showed me that compassion. And eventually he started looking into and reading other things, and now he's a former white supremacist, and he goes around talking about his experience to other people to try to get them to change. And that's what makes change. They told a story of another guy who is an African-American guy, and he searches out white supremacist males, and he'll go up to him and say, I obviously don't agree with you, but would you tell me why you think those things about me? Come have a beer with me. And they're kind of like floored because they should be fighting this guy. And some of them don't, but some of them take him up on it. Like, okay, I'm going to tell you why you're a horrible person to this African-American guy. So they go have a beer with him, and he just hears them out. He doesn't try to challenge them right away. He just hears them out. He's showing compassion to them. And eventually they break. They can't handle someone being compassionate that is someone that they're supposed to hate. And this guy's changed the hearts of so many guys. It's insane. And I think that's why Martin Luther King's message was so powerful to people, because he was fighting against racism and the racists in society. But the language that he used was inclusive, not exclusive. He would call them brothers and sisters. And he would say, my brothers and my sisters and us. And he would use this inclusive language. And when you hear that enough, the walls of your heart will start to crumble, because you cannot rage against love and compassion for a long period of time. It just doesn't work. And that's why it's so effective. So when you come across someone who has a lot of hate, or who has a kind of a hateful way of viewing the world, you can shame them, and you might get some pats on the back, and some people that you know might say, hey, nice job, you really showed them. Or you can come up to them and say, hey, I don't agree with you, but tell me about it, and show them some compassion and plant the seed. And that is a tough thing to do. There aren't many people in life who have the strength to be able to do that. But that's why it's so impactful, because it's hard to give out, but it's also hard to accept. But if you do accept it, it will crumble the walls of hate. That's my message. Thanks for watching.